it's where people just don't understand that we are full on under attack right now, and people can't see it. And I've been trying to wake people up, going back with the whole Dispatch, my book, in 2014 when I was in national news, because I didn't want to be in the LGBT parade. And people had no clue what was happening, because that was just right after the cake baker. Do you remember the cake baker in Colorado? He didn't want to bake the gay wedding cake.
Okay.
It's like, this is against my conscience. And they went after him hardcore. The state. I remember seeing that, and I was like, what is
this?
And
you were a cop at the time.
And I remember just reading about it, just trying to understand it. Like, how does this happen? This guy's getting in. And I was pretty fascinated with it. And now looking back, I understand why, because I feel like God was kind of preparing me for what was about to happen.
Yeah.
I really believe that, because I never wanted to be a cop when I was younger. I never wanted to be. I never had that desire to be a policeman, let alone a motorcycle cop, because I'm actually afraid of motorcycles. Like,
wow.
it's, I
Okay.
mean,
So how'd you end up there?
I just felt like that's where I needed to go.
Wow.
And then, I was on the motorcycle squad for a year. I was their number one guy. And, but it took me just to get on the squad. I was getting pushed back because I had, prior to, so like the whole parade, where do I need to go back? How far do I need to go back? with
whatever
this?
makes the most sense. Yeah.
My gosh.
Your story's awesome. So whatever.
So I should have started out like, my name is Eric Moutsos, and I'm a recovering government employee. That's how I start this out, because it is like, there's full on PTSD. I probably need to go to therapy because of all the things that I've been through, and the things that I've seen. But I got into law enforcement right around 25. I went on a ride along. I was pursuing a country music career. I was on Evander Holyfield's record label. I have a crazy life story. I was on Evander Holyfield's record label for a couple years as his first and only country artist. I had opened up for Colin Ray. I thought that's what I was going to do, but I went to Nashville, and I kept going to Nashville, and I just felt like it just wasn't. It just fell off. It just didn't feel like I wanted to do that, but we had just had our first child. I told the guy that found Tim McGraw, he was going to do a joint venture deal. His name's Mike Borchetta. He was going to do a joint venture deal with my album, and they wanted me to come out and do this radio tour, but it was my daughter's first birthday, and I'm like, hey, I can't come out for this. And he's like, I don't think you understand what this is going to take. And I'm like, maybe I don't. And then it just kind of dissolved to where it was like, I've got a family, like I've got it was almost like, it was kind of like a choice.
You
like
had kids at the time?
Our first.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just your first. Okay.
And I just knew that if I pursued that, I just knew it kind of spiritually. If I pursued that a family life and that they don't mix.
Yeah. Yeah. Being on the road, being on tour. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's it. That's if you stick.
Yeah.
I'm not great at it, but if you get a good song, you could stick and go.
Yeah.
So then I did a ride along with this guy in my old church, and he's on the gang unit in the SWAT team.
Where at? In Salt Lake City. Where at in Salt Lake?
Like where?
Like right downtown? Or?
Oh yeah, just everywhere downtown. I mean, we were focused. So we went to all these really hot calls, man with a knife. I didn't want to come home. It was so much fun.
Yeah. I did one in Vegas one time. That's what I was asking.
It's fun,
cool.
right?
Yeah.
It's like, whoa.
Yeah.
It's like you're like in the matrix. It's like listening to everything happening. And so I really loved it because I can't just sit still. So I went home and I'm like, I really want to do this. Like I could see myself doing this. And my wife's like, you'd be a good cop. Mm-hmm. So then I went to school and,
wow.
My first introduction was this man. His name was Chief Randy Johnson, and he stood up. So we were all cadets. We hadn't yet been hired. It was a Salt Lake Community College. And he asked a question. He's like, who do you work for? And people would raise their hand. Well, we work for the community. We work for the people. We work for the city. And he's like, somebody's like, we work for you. And he just rolled his eyes. He's like, I want to be very crystal clear. He's like, you work for God and never forget that. And I remember just getting chills. Like,
wow.
Like, because I felt
that's
that
awesome.
was true. I was like, that's true. But I didn't, I'm like, this is how it's going to be?
Yeah.
Like, this is awesome, right?
Yeah.
Well, it turns out I never heard anything like that ever again until years later when this friend that I had not super great friend, but friend that I had committed suicide on the police department, and a police officer. And as they were giving his like final kind of dispatch over the air, like Juliet 25, end of call, like end of watch, right? Godspeed. She's like, Godspeed. And it just hit me. I was like, so we're going to talk about God at the very, very beginning of our career. And then we're going to talk about God at the very, very end once they commit suicide, but nothing in between. Because talking about God downtown Salt Lake City was taboo.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like you don't talk about that stuff. And to me, that's the reason why we're in such a mess, because we don't talk about it.
Exactly.
We don't talk about religion. We don't talk about politics. And if it's not the right type of religion, which this whole Wokism is a religion.
Sure.
I'm telling you, this is a religion.
Yeah. Right.
If we don't talk about that kind of stuff, we're automatically going to be part of this religion. And it's, I have this quote that I want to share. It's, sorry for the audience or that's listening to this, but I really want to, it's by a man named Neil A. Maxwell. And it's meeting the challenges of today. And he says in it, I promise this is worth the wait.
Yeah. Take your time.
Challenges of today. So this is given in 1978, so 3 years before I was born. And he says this, we are now entering a period of incredible ironies. Let us cite but one of these ironies, which is yet in its subtle stages. We shall see in our time a maximum, if indirect, effort made to establish irreligion as the state religion.
Dang.
Hold on. It gets really good. As the state religion. So what that means, irreligion is no religion.
Right.
You can't talk about it.
Yeah.
Hold on. Why are you talking about this?
How much do you hear right now about people saying religion's the problem, religion's the issue?
Yeah.
You hear it like crazy right now.
Oh, yeah. Even in our own faith, even in our own denominations. Like, we don't talk about that outside of church. It's actually a new form of paganism that uses the carefully preserved and cultivated freedoms of Western civilization to shrink freedom even as it rejects the value essence of our rich Judeo-Christian heritage. Then he goes on to say, brothers and sisters, irreligion as the state religion would be the worst of all combinations. Its orthodoxy would be insistent, and its inquisitors inevitable. Its paid ministry would be numerous beyond belief. Its Caesars would be insufferably condescending. Its majorities, when faced with the clear alternatives, would make the Barabbas choice, as did a mob centuries ago when Pilate confronted them with the need to decide. Awesome. So this was 43 years ago. He's like, hey guys, irreligion's coming as the state religion. And that's the whole thing. The separation of church and state. You can't talk about this stuff. That's not what it was meant to be. It was meant so that the state couldn't force an idea on the people.
Yeah. Right.
Including irreligion, including wokeism, including this diversity idea that you're going to go in and you're going to hand select based off of gender, based off of race, based off of now sexual orientation. That's how we're going to build our entire structure. Doesn't even matter if you're qualified.
Right. Scary.
Don't you feel like people are like scared of the confrontation, and that's why most people, or do you just feel like they don't know, or do you feel like they kind of know what's happening and they're just scared to actually confront the beast? You know, I've always said, if you're not willing to confront something, you're condoning it. And so, I feel like most people know. I'd like to hear your perspective on that. Do you feel like most people are, you're obviously, this is kind of your wheelhouse.
Originally, yeah, I do think that they know, but then once they don't make a decision, then they have to now choose. So now they've got to be a part of the system. And now they get mad at those that start speaking. And the reason why they're mad at those that are speaking are because that's a form of justification for not saying what they wish they could. You see? So we had this happen in Salt Lake City. So I was on the motorcycle squad at the time, and they come in and do this whole diversity training. I call it Discrimination Day.
And this was back in 2014.
No, this was in 2013.
Wow.
So this was just 4 months before
A decade ago.
before I lost my.
Yeah, everybody's got to listen to this because it's unbelievable what happened. It's
this is a decade ago.
It's crazy what happened. here.
So this woman, really nice lady, Asian, just so you can kind of get an idea. She's in HR, and she comes up and she brings up this pie chart of like the demographic of Salt Lake County, which is 85% white, 10% Hispanic. It's a pie chart, right? Like this is what the demographic of Salt Lake County looks like. Well, then she brings up another pie chart that clearly was a problem to them because there's 86% white employees in Salt Lake City. So we have too many white people is basically what she's saying.
Okay.
And so she asked the question, well, how can we change this? And everyone's like, you can tell people want to say something. So I raise my hand. And they're like, people at the table are like, Moutsos, don't say something. And I was like, ma'am, so I said, correct me if I'm wrong. What you're saying is that if I put my application for, say, sergeant, if I put my application in, but somebody that's in that pie chart that's in a lower category and everything is equal on paper, you're going to take somebody that's in a smaller sliver of the pie. And she says, well, how else are we going to do it? And so I said, ma'am, that's discrimination. This is still a color of skin. You're discriminating on me. Oh, dude, you know how it gets really uncomfortable in these types? It was really I was scared.
Yeah.
Like I say this story now, but when I was saying it, my voice was shaking.
How far into your career were you at this time?
6.5.
Yeah, not very far.
Yeah, or more.
Okay. But I mean, as far as you go a 20-year career typically, right? So you're still in the front.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You got a long way ahead of you.
I knew I had to say something because it was wrong.
Yeah.
It was wrong.
Sure.
And so, because that's what they were starting to do. They were starting to hand select people based off of their race. They were hand selecting people based on their gender, passing up really good qualified people, right?
That's what happened to our government recently.
It's what's happening everywhere. Yeah. It's happening in churches. It's happening everywhere.
Are you saying they picked Joe Biden because he has Alzheimer's? Is that or dementia? Is that why they picked him? I need to make sure that I'm just kidding.
No, I think it's more than just Joe Biden. Man.
Sorry.
No, it's everywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, it's everywhere. We had the same problem in Utah politics.
Yep.
Mia Love, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Like I really liked her at first, but she came out, I'm the first black blah. It's like, why can we can clearly see this?
Yeah.
So why are you bringing it up?
Yeah, if the roles were turned and we said the same thing in our shoes, it would be
considered racist.
Yes.
So anyway, I went to the woman afterwards, right? And I just said, hey, look, can we just talk about this? I said, what you're teaching here. Oh, and then on the piece of paper, it said like 85% white, 10% Hispanic, Native American, 1%. And then it said LGBTQ. So this is in 2013. I'm like, that's not a race. And the Asian woman was like, oh, I actually agree with you on that, but the mayor wants it in there. I'm like, this is poisonous. I'm like, because now you're going to start hand selecting people based on who they're sexually attracted to. Mm-hmm. Why should any of us know this? Mm-hmm. So this is 4 months before the parade, right? So I said, do you care if I call your boss? So I call up to the head of HR. And I said, hey, this is Officer Moutsos. I'm kind of nervous about this conversation, but I just want to, this is an open door policy, right? I said, what you're teaching is poisonous. And she's like, well, what do you mean? I said, because you're hand selecting people based off of their gender and their race and their sexual orientation now. I said, that is racist. That is sexist. Mm-hmm. Because now you're seeing through the lens, you're looking at people as their race.
It's discrimination by definition. Yeah.
And you're stopping people. I said, this is not good. What's happening? And I said, can I ask you a question? Because, let me just, I'll try to explain this because the chief of police at the time, they hired somebody in the police department I'll explain it. So I said, okay, can I ask you a hypothetical to the lady? She's like, yeah. I said, if the fire department hired a fire chief who has never fought a fire, who doesn't have any fire experience, but the fire department hired a chief, what would you say to that? Well, I'll answer you right now. They would not be qualified. I said, I'm really glad you said that, because right now the chief of police just hired a deputy chief who's a woman and not a cop. And she just sat silent because our chief of police hired a deputy chief, bars on her collar, badge, lights and sirens in her car, no gun. And she's now ordering people around to the police department. And I said, and a lot of people in the police department are not okay with this. Is that all you have, Officer Moutsos? That's all I have. The next day. And I mean, I couldn't believe I did it, but I felt like someone's got to say something.
Yeah.
And look, a lot of people listening are probably like, oh, so you're a problem. No. I don't want that confrontation. The reason why I'm saying that is because everybody's thinking it. I don't like confrontations. I actually don't. I'm like, I want to be peaceful. I want to be I want to live and let live to the best. But when something's wrong, it's wrong. And I had never had anything in my file in almost 7 years. I never was written up.
Right.
I only had awards. So 3 years or a couple years prior to that, my bicycle sergeant, he came to us and said we needed to arrest 5 people per day. And I was like, what do you mean? Half of us are already doing that. Well, you have to do this. Like, you have to turn in 5.
It's a quota.
Absolutely. And I said, that's not a good idea. And so I challenged it. So I turned in 3 that day, and everybody else turned in 5. So he's counting the tickets, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and he gets to me, 1, 2, 3. And I knew the confrontation was coming, right? And so I had to have you ever blurred your eyes? Like, can you just blur your eyes right now? I had to do that because I was so scared. So I'm staring at him, but my eyes are blurred. And he calls me out. He just mother F's me, just screaming at me, dismisses everyone, makes me stay after an extra hour, didn't pay me overtime to arrest 2 more people. And I wouldn't do it. And so finally he's like, go home. And so at that moment, that's when so that's kind of like so that was before the discrimination.
Okay.
So all these things leading up to when they finally took my badge, it was like one after the next.
These little black marks they're giving you.
But there was nothing on file. Because how can you write somebody up for being insubordinate on what? Quotas.
Right.
Because
supposedly non-existent.
Exactly.
Yeah.